Hi, this is Max Rodersman from Does It Matter and Why? And today we're joined by Craig Kelly in in Georgia. Hi,
Good
Craig. How
morning,
you doing?
Max. How you doing? I'm at the Boots Ward Recreational Center right now.
Great. And it's Friday, so let's, I guess, follow up on all the little things that have been going on.
So little things are super important, Max, when it comes to voting or really anything else. And it doesn't take much to upset the apple cart, although I guess around here it'd be the peach cart. And I'm a great example. So coming down here, I sent in my request for an absentee ballot. And I called up yesterday because I hadn't received it, or at least I personally had not received it. And they said, well, we sent it on the 26th. So I asked my host, and they said, yeah, we think it's here someplace. And it turns out that it was in the household mail. So I opened it up, and there's an outer ballot, there's an inner ballot, and then there's another envelope, outer envelope, inner envelope, and a separate inner envelope. There was no ballot. And the outer ballot, the one that had been mailed to me, it was taped shut. Somehow it had ripped, someone had ripped it, whatever. And everything was there except for what I really needed, which was the ballot. So yours truly can't vote unless I can find someone to get to the election commission in Cambridge by noon. And again, the little things, it wouldn't have mattered if I'd done this yesterday, because I could have asked my wife, who gets off of work at 3, to scooch over to the election center, drop off an overnight envelope that she would have had to have picked up at FedEx or the post office, and then the election people would have mailed it out. But the election commission closes at 12 today. She's not off work till 3. So these little things, they add up, and what winds up happening is I won't be able to vote this year. And it's sort of like I did what I was supposed to do. I sent in the application, but
This is because you underestimate your enemy.
I don't think it's who said it, but never mistake for malice what can be ascribed to just either incompetence or bad luck or whatever. And I don't know that this happened purposefully. I'm trying to figure out, my understanding is the post office is supposed to put something on it when they reseal your envelope. And the election commission assures me that it wasn't them. And I'm like, well, who would have done this to Craig Kelly? Why? What would be the point? But it does illustrate just like the long string of things that can stand between wanting to vote and voting. In my case, it was me not asking early enough. And even then, if I'd asked 2 days ago, my host, if they'd gotten this thing yet, I didn't want to poke through their mail. I thought they knew to let me know that it was in. But, some people get the mail and I get the mail and I look through it once a week. So, they weren't looking at it from me. So when they found it, it was a little late, and that's on me. But it didn't occur to me to be more aggressive. I'd done what I was supposed to do. It didn't occur to me I wouldn't get what I needed to get. So these things go wrong, and then you're like, okay, how can I fix it? Yesterday, I could have fixed it. If election offices the Friday before the election were open until 5, which doesn't seem unreasonable, I could have fixed it. Would have cost me more money.
So I'm going to make the argument that you should fly back so you can vote on Tuesday.
Well, yeah, there's a theory to that. I'm not gonna.
No, you should, because, well, let me make my argument. Let's just say on Tuesday there's voter suppression in Georgia. All you can do is report it. You're not going to be able to prevent it. So the only thing, and now you lose a vote here in Cambridge. So you need to come back and vote in Cambridge where you can vote. If you're really for voting, then you should come back and vote where you can and not worry about something in someplace else, which you actually will have no control over on Tuesday.
I cannot argue with your logic, Max. I'm not going to do it.
Thank you.
The $800 or whatever it would cost to fly back and vote. I guess my vote's just not worth the $800, and I do feel an obligation to do what I said I would do down here. But there is a logic to what you're saying, and certainly what is a vote worth. So I was
Well,
willing
I'm going to go to Davis Square and find a homeless and buy a vote
Well,
for
you
you,
know what you
whatever you
could
want. You send me.
what you could do, Max, is you could go to the post office and then to the election commission, and for $60 we could solve this whole thing. The $30 to overnight it down here and the $30 to overnight it back. So
No.
if
It's faster for me to go to Davis Square and buy a vote.
well, you don't know how that person's going to vote, do you?
Is it going to vote the way I just call my Republican friend and ask him like how he does it, and then I'll just go do the same thing.
But you would not be able to buy that vote with certainty, and that's the beautiful thing about this process. No one knows how I vote. No one knows how you vote. It's impossible for me to give you $100 and say go vote for Craig Kelly.
Well,
You go in the
see,
voting
now you're
booth.
opening yourself up to this argument. It's like, okay, well, if Republicans are supposedly stealing the votes, but they can't actually predict how they're going to vote, then it's
I'm
not a
saying
problem. Then,
I didn't say they were changing the vote. I said
Right.
they're suppressing the vote. They're stealing people's right to vote. But they're not actually, I don't believe, going in and marking ballots illegally. I think they would if they could, but I just think the
Right.
system is too tight for that.
Okay.
But for me, that's one of the little things. I thought I'd done it, and the little things when you get 2 or 3 in a row, you're stuck. And that's why early or advanced voting is so important, is because you want to give people as many times to get here as possible, because they get here, they forgot their ID. They get here, they realize that when they moved 6 months ago, they moved to a different county, and they hadn't realized that the new street's over the county line. And so they have to go to a different place and vote. So there are all sorts of things that can get in between a person and their vote. So the earlier you get people to the polls, the more likely they can fix it. And in my case, I just wasn't paying enough attention. And I don't want to take the heat off of whoever took my ballot out of the envelope. Like, there's someone that did something wrong, whatever that thing might have been. I'm not saying it was malintent. My ballot did not get to me, and I had nothing to do with it not getting to me. But I didn't manage the process well enough to cure that fault. And arguably, I wouldn't have had enough time anyways. But I think I could have. It just would have been a pain in the neck and more expensive. And
So should we title this "The Poll Watcher That Doesn't Know How to Vote"?
That's a little harsh, Max. It'd be the poll watcher, maybe who didn't pay enough attention. The poll watcher who did everything he was supposed to do, but still couldn't vote. And that goes back to my underlying point. We think voting is easy. We think the whole process is easy. You go in, you vote, you leave. But the whole process is hugely.
And I don't hear you. So Craig, showing that he obviously doesn't care about our show, just hung up on us to take another call. But he's back.
Yes, but
Hi, Craig.
I'm back. And the call was from someone I'd asked to help me with this ballot thing. And he can get to the election commission, give them the absentee overnight thing. It'll get here tomorrow. I'll fill it out. I'll drop it overnight on Monday or even Sunday, and it will be given, hopefully, to the election commission in time to vote. It'll cost Sam some time, me some time. It'll cost me $60. But this is such a great example of all the different things that can go wrong and how complicated voting really is. So for when it goes well, you're like, oh, this is easy. It's like getting on an airplane. You get on the airplane, you fly, you land. You're not thinking about the pilot, the training, the people that put the fuel in, the maintenance workers, the air traffic controllers, the flight attendant, like all that stuff that makes sure it works perfectly for you. You're thinking, oh, this is how hard can this be? But you only realize it when it goes wrong. And that's
I don't think any of our 3 viewers are gonna like look at you and say, "Hey, you're right. It's complicated." They'll be like, "No, it's not complicated. Be here when you need to vote, or if you can do an early vote, then make sure you do it early and don't save it for the last minute."
But that's my point. I didn't. I asked for the absentee ballot with plenty of time, and the envelope got to me with plenty of time. The envelope just did not have a ballot in it. And that's the
But you didn't
problem.
realize this till late. You just didn't realize that till today.
Until yesterday when I decided, well,
Yeah.
is that so? Sure, other people may have chased the ballot harder, but there's no particular reason to think that the ballot wasn't going to be in the envelope. But it turns out
Yeah,
that
but you.
the ballot was not in the envelope, and the same reason is there's no particular reason to think some of my battery's dead. My battery has never died. So I walk out to the car to drive to the polls, and my battery is dead. And I've got like 30 minutes before the polls close. Well, you're not going to make it. You call up your neighbor. Maybe they can help you. Maybe they can't. But there are all sorts of things. You can't find your ID card. You left your ID at college. Your Georgia University card is expired. There are all these things that you can fix with time, but you can't fix without time. So the later you wait, this is why early voting is so important, Max. The later you wait, the tougher it is to vote if things go wrong.
Listen, I'm embarrassed for you, so I think we should stop the call right now. But if you have other things to say that, well, I can't imagine you could say anything more embarrassing. So tell us some more other little things that are going on.
Otherwise, it's generally really, really smooth. There are some concerns that absentee ballots aren't going out, and generally, well, it's not. I call them absentee. They're mail-in, so students aren't getting them. And why aren't students getting them? Is it because they get stuck up in the university mail house? Is it because they've moved 3 times and they put in the wrong place? There are lots of reasons why, and I don't know that there's a concerted effort to keep students from mailing. But it is one of those things that disproportionately impacts left-leaning votes, because assuming that students tend to be left-leaning. And you could argue the same challenge exists with elderly votes, that it's difficult for them to get the absentee or mail-in ballot, print it out, write a signature on it, get it back in. So as long as things sort of are difficult for everyone in a fair way, that's life. And I think I'm the example of stuff just happens. And if you can cure it, great. If you can't, that's unfortunate. But ultimately, those of us that have wealth and time and so forth have overall a better opportunity to vote. So if my battery is dead in my car, but I'm lucky enough to have 2 cars, I go take the other car and drive to the polls. And the whole idea of early voting and so forth is to try and make it as easy as possible. And I think I'm a great example of why you want it to be as easily as possible, because even folks who are as interested and well situated as me to get their vote in can have it not happen. And in my case, it didn't happen, at least partially, because I didn't pay enough attention, and I should know better.
All right, well, let's leave it there. Though
All
I
right,
really
Maxie.
want to come at you with a whole bunch of zingers.
All right, I will. I'll talk to you tomorrow then.
Yes.
Look
Okay.
forward to it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, Max.